"Sir, this isn't a real ID." The words hit the air like a slap. People waiting in line turned their heads. A woman holding a yoga mat raised her eyebrows. A teenager behind her pulled out her phone, already hitting record. Walter Griggs didn't flinch. He simply looked down at the piece of plastic in his hand. The card, once deep blue and crisp, was now a washed-out husk of itself. The edges were frayed, the lettering faded, but the emblem was still there. U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. Barely visible, like a ghost. "I'm just asking for the 10% discount," he said, voice calm but dry like a rusted hinge. The cashier, maybe 21, maybe less, smirked. "This thing looks like it went through a war." A pause. Walter's eyes, milky gray but steady, met hers. It did. Laughter. Not from him. From the two guys in the next checkout lane. One of them held up a Red Bull and grinned. "Hey, Grandpa, get a new printer. That thing's prehistoric." Another voice chimed in, this one from a live stream. "Okay, wait, I gotta show this," the girl with the phone whispered, angling the camera straight at Walter's hands. "This man is trying to pay with a fossil." She hit go live. A little red dot blinked on the screen. Walter stood there, still holding the card, his fingers trembling just slightly. Not from fear, not even from age, just the quiet wear and tear of a life that never fully left the battlefield. "Name?" the manager asked, approaching now, arms crossed, eyes already suspicious. "Walter Griggs." The manager typed something into the register, scrolled, stopped. "We don't have that name in our system. This card's expired, like 15 years ago." Walter nodded slowly. "I know, but I'm still alive." The room went dead quiet. Even the cashier looked unsure for a moment, but the camera didn't stop. The comments rolled in. "Bro thinks he's Captain America. Somebody get him a walker with a scanner." Imagine surviving a war just to get clowned at Target. Walter turned, not away. He looked into the phone lens, direct. "Are you live streaming me?" The girl hesitated, then shrugged. "Yeah, it's just kind of funny." He stared a moment longer, then looked back at his groceries, just a loaf of bread, a can of soup, and dog food. He left it all there, took the card, folded it once with care, and slid it into his shirt pocket. Then he walked out. No one stopped him. Not even the ones who were laughing, because it wasn't funny anymore. Not after the look in his eyes. The door to his trailer groaned open with the same kind of protest as his knees. Walter Griggs stepped inside and let the screen slam shut behind him. The place was quiet. Too quiet. He poured a splash of water into the dish on the floor, and a golden retriever with cloudy eyes thumped its tail but didn't rise. "Yeah, I know," he muttered, squatting slowly. "Rough day for both of us." He sat on the edge of the couch, a patchwork of duct tape and memories, and took the old VA card out of his pocket. He didn't look at it. He didn't have to. He just rubbed his thumb over the folded corner, the one that had survived Iraq, the fire, the desert winds, and his own attempts to forget. But the world didn't forget him. It just erased him. It hadn't always been this way. Once he wore a uniform that carried weight, respect, a name tag that people looked at before they looked away. But when he came back, when the medals were boxed, the uniform hung, and the silence set in, he learned quickly that a war veteran only meant something if he fit into their version of the story. The clean one, the proud one. Walter's story was jagged, unfinished, and too messy for prime time. He had returned from his third deployment with a spinal fracture and tinnitus that never went away. But worse than any physical wound was the gnawing guilt, the kind that played reruns in his head at 3 a.m. The kid in the convoy who never got to call his mother again. The sound of a metal door closing on someone he couldn't save. The fire. Always the fire. The VA clinics were understaffed. His claims got buried in paperwork, and when his wife passed in 2010, breast cancer, too fast to fight, he became untethered. His son Nathan tried to stay connected for a while, but eventually, phone calls turned to texts, texts turned to nothing. Walter never blamed him. The war had already taken too much from the boy. He tried working again. A security guard job at a storage unit lasted 6 months until he had a panic attack in the middle of the night, crouching behind a dumpster, convinced someone was planting an IT deal. After that, he stopped applying. The trailer wasn't much, but it was his. Paid for in installments from an old Army pension and leftover disability checks. Some months were tighter than others. That's why the discount at the store had mattered. It wasn't the money. It was what it meant. What it recognized after dinner, half a can of soup split with the dog. Walter took out a small metal box from the cabinet. He opened it and spread out its contents on the table like old bones. A purple heart, a commendation for bravery, a photo of 3 men laughing in a dusty field, the last laugh they ever shared. He stared at the photo for a long time, then picked up a letter. The edges were soft. The ink had bled slightly from years of being held, maybe once too often. Dear Sergeant Griggs, if you're reading this, it means I didn't make it back. I just wanted to say thank you, not just for dragging my ass out of that Humvee, but for making me believe in something good before the end. You said that someday someone would remember us. I hope they do. But if they don't, remember yourself. That's enough. It was signed, Private Michael Tran, 2004. Walter folded it carefully, his fingers tracing the handwriting like Braille, then placed it back into the box and shut it. Outside, the desert wind picked up, rattling the aluminum siding. Inside, Walter closed his eyes and remembered himself. A million videos were uploaded that day, dances, pranks, arguments in parking lots. But one video, grainy, vertical, 36 seconds long, began to spread with an ache beneath the laughter. The caption read, "Old man thinks he's a war vet. Wait for it. Boomer fails. Expired hero." It had the usual ingredients: public embarrassment, a smug narrator, and a man too old to defend himself. But as it crossed feeds and For You pages, something else happened. People paused. There was a moment about 24 seconds in when Walter looked directly into the camera. Not in anger, not with shame, but with something deeper. A quiet steadiness, like the eye of a storm remembering how it was born. One viewer noticed it first. A username buried in the comments, Semper Ty 89. Profile photo, American flag overlay. He replied simply, "Wait, that's Sergeant Griggs. Fallujah 2004. I'd know that face anywhere." Nobody responded at first, so he added, "He pulled my squad leader out of a burning Humvee. I was there." Suddenly, the post caught fire, but not the kind its original poster wanted. Another. Comment dropped, "This one from a Doc Mason vet. No freaking way. That guy saved my brother's life. I thought he was dead." Then, Griggs? Walter Griggs? That man ran a med-evac solo when the rest of the unit was pinned down. Jesus, I haven't heard that name in years. The original video was reposted, but this time with a new caption. Turns out the expired vet is a decorated war hero. Then came the duets. A former Marine standing at attention. A woman reading a commendation aloud. Photos, news, clippings. Comm logs from the battlefield. Blurry scans of citations, names of those he saved. The hashtag #JoshFoldedCorner began to trend. But Walter had no idea. He didn't have Wi-Fi. He didn't scroll TikTok. His phone didn't even have a camera. While the world buzzed, reposted, argued, defended, and remembered, he was sitting by his dog in a plastic lawn chair, sipping black coffee and feeding birds dry cereal. Across the country in Sacramento, a young girl named Haley Tran sat in front of a laptop. She wasn't scrolling for drama. She had typed in a name, shaking, eyes already wet. Her dad had told her stories about Sergeant Griggs. Her dad, Private Michael Tran, the name from the letter. She never got to meet him. She only had 3 photos, some medals, and that letter. But he always said if she ever found the man who pulled him out of fire, she should say thank you for both of them. She clicked send on a message she wasn't sure anyone would read. "If you're Walter Griggs, I think you saved my dad. He never stopped talking about you. He wrote a letter to you before he died. I found it. I just want you to know We remember. The post barely had 10 likes, but someone saw it. Someone on the editorial team of a show called Heroes Among Us. That same night, the show's producer, Andrea Marsh, was scrolling for stories. Human ones, raw and unpolished. And something about that face, that folded card, and that little girl's comment gripped her. She clicked on the live stream clip, paused at frame 24, then she whispered, "He's not just a story, he's the story." An email was drafted. A crew was scheduled. And without a single call from Walter, the world began to move in his direction. The spark had been struck, and the embers were starting to catch. The letter arrived folded in 3 with hand-drawn stars in the corner. Walter almost tossed it, thinking it was a local ad. But the handwriting on the envelope stopped him. To Mr. Walter Griggs, from Haley Tran. He sat down at the tiny table beside his dog, adjusted his reading glasses, and opened the letter slowly, like it might fall apart. Inside was a picture, a child's drawing of a man in uniform, tall and strong, standing next to a little girl holding a flag. The note read, "My daddy said, you were the bravest man he ever met. He said you kept him laughing when he was scared. He said you saved his life. Thank you for being his friend. Love, Haley." Walter didn't cry, he hadn't in years, but his hands shook and that was close. Behind the letter was another one, typed, official-looking, bearing the seal of Heroes Among Us. "We've recently come across a story about your service and heroism. We'd like to invite you to share your experience with us on national television as part of our Veterans Week special." He stared at it for a long time, then threw it away. 2 days later, a black SUV pulled up near his trailer. Out stepped a woman in a navy pantsuit and flats, walking carefully through the dust like it might swallow her. Andrea Marsh. She didn't bring a camera crew. Just a folder and the drawing Haley sent. "I'm not interested in a spectacle," Walter said before she could speak. Andrea nodded. "Neither am I." But he didn't believe her. He'd seen what the world did to stories like his, shined them up, slapped on music, sold them for clicks. They wanted headlines, not truth. "Then why you here?" She laid the folder on his table. "Because your silence has already spoken louder than most people's careers." He didn't respond. Then she took out something he wasn't expecting. A printed page from a social media feed. Thousands of comments, photos, testimonies. One read, "Sergeant Griggs pulled my dad out of a burning vehicle. He has third-degree burns, but he lived. I wouldn't be here without that man." Another, "I remember his voice in my headset telling us to keep moving. That voice got us home." And another, "We owe him, big." Andrea looked up. "They didn't forget you, Walter, the world did. But your brothers, they never stopped carrying your name." Still, he hesitated. "I didn't do any of it for this," he muttered. "No, you did it so others could live. Now they want to speak for you." Silence. Finally, he spoke. "One condition." "Name it." "No speeches. No suits. No background music. Just truth." She smiled. "We can do that." What Walter didn't know was that the show had already been restructured. The original pitch was for a segment called Old Lions, meant to showcase veterans in a touching but humorous way. Easy clips, viral moments, emotional music. But now, because of the buzz, because of the heat building online, Walter's appearance was set to be the main event of a full-hour special. They called it The Forgotten Flame. Backstage, just before taping, a stylist tried to comb his hair. He declined. An assistant offered makeup. He shook his head. Another tried to explain the script. Walter folded it and tucked it in his pocket. "I'm not here to act," he said. The lights outside the curtain glowed red and gold, the audience whispered. One producer whispered to another, "This could blow up, or go flat." But none of them were ready for what was coming, because they thought they'd invited a relic, but they'd summoned a reckoning. The studio lights hummed. Behind the curtain, Walter stood stiff, hands clasped behind his back. He wore a plain, buttoned-up flannel and his only good pair of jeans. No medals, no fanfare. Just the old VA card folded in his shirt pocket like a secret no one believed. Across the curtain, the host adjusted his mic, dazzling smile in place. Blue suit crisp, voice tuned for drama. And now, he beamed, a story that's going viral across America. You've seen the clip, an elderly man mocked at a grocery store. But is there more than meets the eye? The audience chuckled softly. They were here for entertainment, not reverence. And here he is, the host continued. Mr. Walter Griggs, also known online as Expired Hero. Applause, polite, confused. Some people clapped slower. One man in the back smirked. Walter walked into the light, blinking against the glare. The host extended a hand. Walter, mind if I call you that? No, Walter said, not taking the hand. The host recovered with a laugh. Strong, silent. Type love it. The crowd chuckled. Walter sat in the chair provided. His dog tag necklace barely peeked from under his collar. The host crossed one leg, leaned in. So, Walter, let's talk about that card. Walter looked at him. The VA card. The one that started all this, the host clarified, voice lifting like a punchline was coming. Tell us, what war did your coupon card win? A few audience members laughed. A camera zoomed for reaction. Walter didn't blink. Iraq 2004, Operation Phantom Fury. The room quieted just slightly. The host cleared his throat. Right. But, look, let's be real. It's not every day someone your age becomes a meme. You've seen the video. No, you haven't. I don't have internet. Nervous laughter. The host pushed on. Okay, but I gotta ask. When that girl called your card fake, when people laughed, what were you thinking? Walter leaned forward. I was thinking that none of them had ever held a man whose last words were, "Tell my mom I'm okay." Silence. I was thinking they'd never stood in a ditch soaked in diesel and blood and prayed for dawn. Now the crowd wasn't chuckling. I was thinking that we all carry something folded in our pockets, he said, tapping his chest. But some people carry folded flags instead. The host tried to pivot, reaching for cue cards. Well, okay. Let's lighten it up. You've become a bit of a legend online. Did you know people are calling you the folded corner hero? No. Over 7 million views. You've gone viral, my friend. Walter's voice turned sharp, like broken glass. That video was me being laughed at for surviving. Someone in the front row lowered their phone. Suddenly, the studio lights dimmed. A producer's voice came through the intercom. We've got something special lined up. A screen behind Walter flickered to life. Static. Then, footage. Grainy. Combat cam night vision, the inside of a Humvee, explosions. Then, Walter, younger, bloodied, dragging 2 men through sand and fire, one arm clearly broken. The crowd gasped. The host's smile vanished. Footage kept rolling. Testimonials, faces of real men and women, aged now, one after another. That's the guy who saved me. He ran 3 miles under gunfire to drag out our corpsman. He held my brother's hand as he died, told him he wasn't alone. And then, Haley Tran, holding a drawing. This is for Sergeant Griggs. My dad didn't make it, but I did, because of him. Someone in the crowd started to cry. Then a man in the 3rd row stood up, tall with a limp. Sergeant Griggs, he shouted. 2nd Battalion Echo Company. You pulled me out of the smoke. I never got to say thank you. Walter blinked. The man saluted, and one by one others rose. Veterans, family, nurses, strangers holding pictures, until half the room was standing. The host was silent now. No script, no control. A woman stepped onto the stage, one of the producers, and held something out. A reissued VA card. Fresh, clean, shiny. Walter took it, turned it in his fingers. Then he held up the old one. This one's still better. Laughter. Not mocking this time. Real. Warm. He folded it carefully, like always, and placed it back into his pocket. The camera zoomed in, trying to catch his face. Maybe tears. But Walter was dry-eyed. He'd seen too much water wasted in the wrong places. The taping ended without a standing ovation. It ended in silence. No music, no dramatic fade out, just the hum of lights cooling overhead, and the quiet shuffling of people unsure whether to approach or just watch. Walter walked off stage alone. Back, in the green room, someone had left a box. A simple, unmarked cardboard box with a sticky note. "For Sergeant Griggs, these are for you." Inside were letters, dozens, maybe hundreds, some typed, some handwritten, some stained with tears or coffee, or time, letters from children, soldiers, widows, strangers. "You saved my uncle. He never talked about the war until your story aired. Now he's telling his grandson he was proud to serve. I watched you sit silent on that stage and realized, I never said thank you to my dad. I did tonight. I mocked you when I first saw that video. I'm ashamed. I'm sorry." Walter read them slowly, some twice, some out loud to his dog later that night, as if to say, "You hear this too, right?" It wasn't all for nothing. He placed each letter in a shoebox and wrote on the lid with a permanent marker, "Still here." A few days later, one letter arrived. With no return address, the handwriting was familiar, painfully so. Nathan. Walter opened it on the porch. "Dad, I don't know what to say. I didn't see a hero when I was a kid. I just saw a broken man. I didn't understand the war or why you couldn't smile at Christmas or why you slept on the floor. But I watched the show. And I finally saw you. Not the pain, the strength, the silence. I want to see you again if you'll let me. Nathan." Walter sat with the letter in his lap until the sun was gone. No music swelled, no audience clapped, just crickets, and the sound of something deep inside him unlocking. Walter didn't move back into the spotlight. He didn't have to. The spotlight moved to him. After the show, producers offered him book deals, podcasts, paid speaking tours. He turned them all down, but he did say yes to one thing. Every Tuesday and Friday, Walter drove his aging pickup to a small rehab center on the outskirts of town, one that barely kept the lights on, mostly funded by scattered donations and local goodwill. It wasn't fancy. No signs, no slogans, but it was filled with veterans, some recovering from addiction, others just from being forgotten. At first, Walter just sat in the circle, said nothing, let others talk. But as the weeks passed, the stories came easier. He never made speeches. Instead, he listened, really listened, his stillness acting like permission. The others began to open up. A young Marine who hadn't slept through the night in 4 years. A woman medic who flinched every time a car backfired. An old sailor who just wanted someone to remember his friend's name. Walter didn't offer solutions. He just offered presence, and it was enough. He began using the money from the show's appearance fee, every cent of it, to start a support fund for therapy, temporary housing, emergency aid. He called it the Folded Corner Fund. When asked about the name, he smiled. It's for things people stopped noticing, but still matter. One day after a meeting, a familiar face appeared. At the edge of the group, it was the cashier from the store. She didn't say anything at first, just sat, watched. After the session, she approached him slowly, holding something wrapped in brown paper. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she said. "But I wanted you to have this." Walter unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a sketch. Done. In pencil, delicate and detailed. It was him from behind, sitting on a bench, his flannel shirt and cap crumpled, but his shadow cast long and proud. At the bottom, "Some strength doesn't speak, it just stands." He nodded. She turned to leave. He didn't call her back. He didn't need to. Sometimes silence is the clearest answer, and she understood. Because when she looked back from the door, Walter raised 2 fingers, just slightly, like a silent salute, and her eyes welled up just once before she slipped away. Late autumn, the sky soft with dusk. Walter sat on the weathered bench just outside the rehab center, his hands resting on a cane he rarely used but carried anyway, more habit than need. Leaves danced around his boots in lazy spirals. At his side, the same dog, older now, a little slower, lay curled, tail flicking gently as if chasing dreams. Across the lawn, a group of kids played catch. Shouts and laughter cut the stillness like birdsong. One of them, a little girl with braids and a spark in her step, broke away and approached him with hesitant curiosity. "You're the man from TV," she said, eyes wide. "The hero." Walter, mild, just a flicker. "No heroes here," he said. "Just people who remember." She frowned. "Are you still a soldier?" He thought about that, about the lives saved and lost, the years blurred by pain, the names folded into letters he couldn't throw away. Then he nodded once. "I'm still watching. That's what soldiers do." She beamed, as if that answer made perfect sense. He handed her a small paper airplane he'd folded while sitting there. A tiny thing. Inside, scrawled in his neat, crooked handwriting, were 5 words. "Carry the quiet with you." She took it like it was treasure, like it meant something more than she could say, and maybe, one day, it would. As she ran back to the others, Walter leaned back, looking at the sky. The light caught the edge of his cardigan, faded, folded, nearly translucent in the sun. He didn't hide it anymore. He let it show, because it wasn't just proof of what he'd done. It was a reminder that even things dismissed, worn out, or overlooked could still cast long shadows, still stand, still shine. And somewhere far beyond the reach of cameras or likes, or applause, the world breathed in, and for once remembered. If this story moved you, share it with someone who still carries quiet strength. Sometimes the softest voices leave the loudest echoes.